are here for episode 38. Brad, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. We had our weekly today, and a little rainy, but nothing too bad to complain about. It wasn't cold and rainy, so I'm feeling good. Had a bad round, but we all have bad rounds, and we have to get over them and have a good one after.
Absolutely. I made a friend suffer through with me. I spent the week last week over in Atlanta doing some work, and then was playing decent disc golf while still working on my form. And then I had a round this week that, like I said, made a friend suffer through because it was like, oh, this is so bad. We're not doing anything well.
Hey, I feel that. So, hey, but overall, I think we're both improving. Hopefully, the listeners, you're improving as you're getting what to do and what not to do equally from our podcast. So, I'm excited for this week. We're kind of revisiting some slots in the bag now, but I think again, for me personally, selfishly, it's really making me rethink these slots and hey, do I have something that covers this, or am I kind of in between? Is it something I need, or is it something I don't need? So I'm looking forward to today's episode.
And I think that's going to happen, right? That's kind of, as the show evolves, as we learn on this podcast, it's going to be worlds of, hey, there are only so many options when it comes to putting discs in someone's bag. And at 38 attempts at doing this, and if we count we've had 2 reunion episodes.
Yeah.
So
2, yeah.
We're 36 chances to try to fix some stuff. So we're going to revisit some stuff. And I think eventually we will end up with you even trying some of the same discs again. So I'm excited for that possibility as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And we kind of did that today. One of the discs I actually bagged, and I threw it against another one. But here's the beauty of it. I tried it in a different plastic and a different weight. So, but all those things, all the variables are coming into play.
I love it. Well, hey, without further ado, let's bring in our guest. Welcome to In the Bag, Mr. Franklin. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing pretty well.
Glad to have you on.
Come on. Well, Franklin, I'm not going to lie to you. As I'm looking through the literal hundreds of applications that we have, your bag stands out among many. And so we asked Franklin before we started recording, hey, do you listen to the show? And he said he's a weekly listener. And so I have to ask, was your bag always like this, or has it kind of molded into this as you've watched the show?
So I've started playing back in 2008, 2009. Okay. And my brothers were the ones to introduce me to it. And I didn't start competitively playing or more on a weekly basis playing until about 2019 after watching Paul Macbeth win his 5th world title. So I got front row seats for the 18th hole. It was really awesome to see. So,
wow.
That's great.
Yep. But beyond that, my brothers had a lot of big influence on building my bag, and especially the cycling, because we kind of entered into that era of where, KC rocks and just different discs from Innova were always about cycling your molds. And so that's why my bag was structured the way it was. And a lot of the discs that you see in it currently have been because of the In the Bag podcast.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we appreciate the trust, and it's exciting to see someone who so you've got, I think it's 8 molds, something like that. Yeah. You have 8 molds over 20 discs, which is super fascinating. But before we dive into your bag, I don't want to spoil that too much. We want to get to know you as a player, Franklin. So you answered the first one, which is awesome, and how long you've been playing. So you've actually been playing longer than me, and I love that.
Definitely me.
Yeah, I joined you in that, played for several years, and then finally was like, oh, I should not take this seriously, but actually try to get good and improve and play in competition, stuff like that. So love to hear that. When we talk about your game itself, how far, if you were to step up to a hole, how far do you feel like you throw average backhand distance, and how far do you throw forehand distance on controlled golf shots?
Yeah, so my backhand distance is around 370, and my forehand distance is around 200, 250, somewhere in there. So.
Okay. Awesome. That's, That seems to be we have a lot less guests come on that have the like forehand dominance. Wouldn't you say, Brad?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a rare trait for our guests.
Yeah, and I feel like if you're a guest of ours that comes on and you're like, oh, by the way, I throw a 300 plus foot forehand, it's like you are really the anomaly. So that's fantastic. I think a lot of people can relate to those numbers, Franklin. And then our next question is, we get you on the putting green. We'd line you up. You got 10 putters at 15 feet, 10 putters at 25 feet, 10 putters at 30 or 40 feet. Wow, that was tough. I've asked this question 38 times and I still failed. 15, 25, and 40. Franklin, how many are you hitting at each station?
So 15 feet, I probably make 60% of those, so 6 out of the 10. And then 25 feet, I will probably drop to about 40%. And then 40 feet, I'll probably make like 1, so, if any.
Okay. So putting is not like, what is the strength of your game, would you say?
The strength of my game, I definitely would say, is upshots. I was like that overall. I tend to have a Greg Barsby type of. I have an open stance towards the basket, and then something I've been trying to incorporate from overthrow disc golf is kind of a pendulum and sea bass arm swing. I was like, well, I'm looking at the basket just to create accuracy, and so I feel like I have a lot of success on my approaches.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I've seen that open stance. I mean, the open stance is fantastic. It's always funny, like playing with overthrow. You'll see you have, Josh, obviously the teacher, the coach, Mikey behind the camera. It's always fun because Mikey voices the exact things that Josh has taught him while he's doing it. So like Josh will stand, or Mikey will stand there and be like, all right, I'm going open stance on this. And he'll like talk through the motions and be like, yeah. And it's like just fantastic. Love to see it. So that open stance definitely has some wind to it. Awesome. Well, dude, without further ado, let's dive into your bag. We're going to be talking about fairway drivers actually in your bag. So another thing that I really appreciate about your bag is you have a lot of manufacturers represented. So you have some gyro. I say a lot now that I look at it. It's really 2 because you've got gyro and Prodigy.
Innova. We got some Valkyrie.
Oh, the Valkyries are there. Yeah, we got
Castoplast with the Berg.
Okay, so I'm a liar. It is indeed actually a lot of manufacturers. We were there the first time. So talking about Castoplast, you got 3, not 1, not 2, 3 Bergs in the bag. What do you use the Bergs for?
So the K2 Berg that I have has become my primary approach disc. I used to use a K3 in that spot until I realized that the K3 plastic I don't really care for as much on a fan grip. The K2 I can really dig my thumb into on a fan grip. The Glow one, that's my only ace disc. I've had 2 aces on it. They were only like 150 feet a piece, so I was like, you might not call them an ace at that point, but
still counts.
for me,
still counts.
Yeah. So for me, that's my only ace disc. I throw that one mainly off the tee. It's the most reliable. The K3's gotten pretty beat up to where it wants to drift a little bit if I throw it really hard to the right. So. And then other than that, it's a throw in, chasing the chains disc for me.
Okay. Awesome. Now this is going to be a self-serving question. If I were to perhaps be playing in a Berg only tournament about 7 days from now, what type of plastic I'm going to be playing in possibly snow conditions. So it's going to be cold. What type of plastic am I looking to? I thrown the Berg, I would say, if I had to count it up, like 8 times. So what type of plastic should I get for a Berg only tournament? I only get 1 disc. Yeah,
so for the colder temperatures, definitely the K2. I would compare it most to G Star from Innova. So with just the Castoplast signature plastic. So I was like, great mold, great plastic, and so on and so forth. But then K3 is really tacky, so that would also work really well in the wet conditions. So
Okay. Awesome. So you advise against the K1 soft
no, the
for a
K1
Berg oil.
soft is the K1 soft is what I meant if I didn't compare that
Okay.
to the G Star. Yeah, and then not the K1. So K1 soft, and then the K3 would be the two that I'd recommend. Stay away from the K1.
Okay, perfect. That is what I'll do then. So appreciate it for the advice. Now back to the back. So you got 3 proxies in there. Brad, have we had you throw a proxy yet?
Oh, you haven't, but
But you
I
throw them.
shout out Galactic Disc Dies, or Galact Dies, I believe is the correct word. He sent me the most sick Eclipse dyed Gengar proxy that you've ever seen. So shout out. I told him I'd give him a shout out. But yes, I've thrown the proxy, and I'm very interested to hear. I'm assuming these are your putting putters. You're putting with proxies?
No, I'm actually putting with a Rico from Castoplast.
Okay.
Okay. That makes more sense. I was very curious. So, your proxies, go ahead with them. What are you using those for in your bag if you're not putting with them?
Yeah, so the proxy made it in around November of this year, so around Thanksgiving, and it was because of In the Bag podcast. And for me, it's just a really straight putter. I got a neutron soft proxy to start off the collection, and that one's just dead straight. And I feel like it fits a spot of where I can cycle my distortion, because my distortion will eventually beat into what a proxy is out of the box. And then the proxy will kind of fill more of the understable category. So that's what I felt, because the reason I took the Ricos, because I used to throw them out of the bag, was the kind of the blunter, thicker bullet edge that the Rico has. I didn't really like it since I power gripped my throwing putters. And the proxy was similar in profile to a distortion. I could have gone an envy route when adding that into the bag, but I chose not to do that since a few of my other brothers were already on the envy hype, and so that's why I went with the proxy.
Okay.
I hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to be very curious. So if you just put this in November, I'm going to be very curious to see the Neutron Soft proxy, how long it lasts, because how I describe a Neutron Soft Envy is that it's everything a proxy wants to be, because it's very understable, very beat in, like hyzer flips beautifully, absolute laser. So I'll be curious to see, does that proxy become too flippy for you? And at that point, I might look at maybe a plasma proxy or a neutron proxy to balance off of that electron proxy for just a little less overstability.
Yeah, so I do have an electron proxy kind of taking in like an understable slot currently, and then I do have an eclipse proxy kind of filling more of a overstable, kind of like just a little bit of variance, not like by too much, but just a little bit.
Okay.
I was going to ask you your Eclipse proxy, that because that's what I'm bagging right now. Do you feel like it's like that very, very, like it'll handle some torque? You can put a little heat on it and it'll still stay very straight and maybe with a tiny bit of finish, or what's it like for you?
Yeah, I definitely describe it as a very straight with a little bit of finish. I can get a little bit of turn out of my Neutron soft, but for the most part, it will finish dead straight if I put it maybe on like the babiest of hyzer.
Okay, yeah, and that because what I'm worried about is my Eclipse Envy does not fly like an Eclipse Envy. It's very beat in, and like that Eclipse proxy is like almost off the shelf where my Eclipse Envy is. So I'm trying to maybe compare the two, and put a quote unquote real Envy in the bag, and not just this beat up one. So good to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked about your distortion one day is going to beat in to do that. I'm very curious because it looks like you bag a premium plastic distortion, but then you've got 2 base plastic A3s in the bag. So what's kind of the difference between the 2 A3s and the distortion?
Yeah, so the A3 was my original kind of utility forehand or even backhand overstable approach disc. When I was using the A3, though, I noticed that it would skip a lot. And so when KJ came out with the distortion and he advertised it with less skip off of the ground than what the A3 would be, I knew immediately that I had to try it out. I was throwing a zone, years back, but I felt like the glide on the zone was not what I wanted. I felt like every time I had to throw it, I had to muscle it to get it to feel like it was going anywhere. So the distortion, I feel like it has a little bit more glide, and a lot of people would confuse that with a little bit less overstability. So I was like, for me, that was where the distortion kind of fits in really nicely. And then the A3s are when I want ground play, and they also have a little bit more stability than the distortion does. And so that's where they tend to fit in. The reason I went with a base plastic in the A3 is because I don't feel like the premium plastics beat in fast enough for how overstable they are. So I wanted to just have an A3 that I could, out of the box, could throw really nicely, and then I can beat it into a really glidey, overstable mid-range type deal. And that's another thing. I use them kind of as a utility mid-range as well.
Okay. Yeah, we were vending at the Battle for Bedford, and there were like 3 or 4 beat-in A3s and like 300 plastic in the use bin, and we were just kind of bored in between rounds, and I started throwing those on forehand, and it was like astounding how far those things went with still some overstability at the end of the flight. They're very beat-in, obviously, so I definitely can echo that. Like, they felt great. I mean, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, and I like that you said you were using them as an overstable utility kind of mid-range, because that was my curiosity looking at the discs you have in your bag. So I can see that filling that slot. I'd be very curious. So you've got 2 in the bag. I wonder if you move down to just having the 1, like if are they too similar in flight for you right now? Because I think that's like, especially when I talk to people about cycling and all that, like the hard part is that having 2 of the same disc in the bag, if they don't do unique enough functions in themselves, we can not only like create some decision-making issues, but it also leads to one of them is not going to get beat in very fast because you're kind of cycling them at the same time, which is going to cause you to not have more unique shots in the bag as fast. So do they already do kind of different things?
Yeah, no, for sure. So my white one that I have in the bag, I've had it in the bag for around 2 years, I would say now. That one tends to, when I put it on hyzer, it will kind of drift to flat, but still have a really A3 overstable finish. And then I have a purple one that's in 350 that is brand new. So I put it on hyzer, it will hold the hyzer. I put it flat, it will stay flat and finish. So.
Okay. Awesome. Cool. Well, dude, sounds like there's a lot of balance there. It's just whenever you see that many putters in the bag, as a putter thrower myself, Brad, a putter man himself, it's just always worth asking, like okay, let's dive in. Let's see all the intricacies of that. The mid ranges, based on how you've described those, or your putters, I'm going to assume that your mid ranges are just kind of longer versions of like what you can get out of your proxies and what you're getting, like not as overstable of your A3s. So I want to spend a little bit of time focusing on, I want to jump to drivers real fast, and then I want to come back to fairways. So for drivers, you got 2 D model S's in the bag. Very unique bag. If I were to think about all the people that have ever come through the shop that I work in, all the people we've had it in the bag, all the Birdie Fam reviews I've done, I think I can literally name 2 people that have ever had a D Model S in their bag. So I am highly interested. What does the D Model S do for you?
Yeah, so I recently was going through the distance drivers and trying to find what really works for me, because kind of foreshadowing, the Valkyrie is my farthest flying disc. So the distance drivers is kind of a niche category for me. It's more or less if I want ground play slash if I'm just trying to, really hammer one out there because there's a little bit of wind and I just want to try to get, as much potential as possible, but it's never a guarantee. So D Model S is a very in the ProFlex plastic because I have one in ProFlex and one in Base Grip. The ProFlex is just a dead straight kind of glidey distance driver. I would compare it to how Innova's advertising the Charger right now, how they call
Okay.
it an in between the Shrike and a Destroyer. So I'd kind of say that the D Model S fits right in that same kind of category. It's dead straight like a Destroyer would be with a healthy finish, but it's kind of glidey and is super straight.
Okay. Awesome. Sick. Well, then let's just jump right into the Valkyrie then. You were talking about those. So you've got 3 Valkyries in your bag. What's kind of the differences between those 3 Valkyries?
So I should have 4 in the bag. I don't know if I submitted that incorrectly, but I have a Halo one. That's kind of my, straight and reliable. It holds whatever angle I put it on. I have a yellow star one. That one is a little bit flippy to the right. It will drift and then it will fade. And then I have my trusty red Valkyrie. That one, I can put it on a steep hyzer. It will flip to flat. It will start to drift right for a little bit and then slightly finish to like a neck neutral flight. And I have a G Star one that's like a replica of that because if I lost that red star Valkyrie, then I, would be kind of like, oh, I gotta lean on this F5 a little bit more because those are kind of flippy, but those can get kind of squirrely in the wind. So,
Okay. Very nice. Well, so when you need that, like looking at that, all of those, I think they're great discs. I love the F5. I think it's fantastic. Underrated by a lot of people. I think because we watch KJ being the predominant thrower of the F5, people think the F5 is flippier than it like actually is, because of how he uses that disc. So I'm with you on, you'd have to lean on it a little more, very Valkyrie-esque, maybe not as much stability. So what we had you do is there's a jump over to the left side of the graph and seeing that sort of guaranteed overstability kind of slot. And what I like is you talked about the drivers are just kind of in the bag is utility for ground play. And I'm curious, Brad, if we can fill that slot with a slower disc. So we just remove the temptation of the, like, not even temptation, but like you don't even have to have something as fast as the D Model S in there, which is going to get even more squirrely with nose angle and all that.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to see this because again, I don't see these charts until like right before the podcast, but I immediately was like, dang, these discs really need to go in his bag. I think either one, but definitely one of them like kind of sticks out. And I'm curious, Robbie, what questions you have for me, but you're saying the Valkyrie is like your farthest flying disc. Well, these are both 9 speeds as well. So now you can have a farther flying version of maybe your D Model S or maybe something a little bit more overstable to get ground play or handle in the wind while not sacrificing distance.
Absolutely. So, Brad, what disc have you tried today?
All right. Well, we have one I've tried in the past here. So we have Thunderbird, and then we also tried the FX2 from Prodigy as well, and 500 plastic, and the Thunderbird and Star. I have not tried the Thunderbird and any other plastic really than Halo. I have 2 Halo ones in my bag. So, and then Prodigy, I haven't thrown a lot of Prodigy. I've thrown some M4s and a few different discs, but it was interesting and I see why Robbie had me throw a Prodigy because you're a Prodigy guy.
Yeah. So you took these out to the field, threw them on backhand. How are they behaving on backhand?
Just as I would hope. I mean, they are flying differently. I don't think this is a class where these discs are the same. Obviously the flight numbers are a little different, and I think it definitely shows. The Star Thunderbird, definitely a little less unstable than a little less stable than the Halo Thunderbird I currently bag, which is really nice. I know that I've said before on podcasts, the Halo Thunderbird is flying a lot like my beat-in Vulture. This Star one flew even more like similar off the shelf. So that's encouraged me. It has that nice, like, for me, I throw a little on Anheuser. I'm, again, trying to correct that. But this just goes very straight. And then at the end, it gives me a nice overstable finish with some ground play. So it's like one I can trust like through a gap but I still need to get left, or I need to go straight and get left. It definitely will stay in the air a little bit, and I can get some distance with it, which is why I like the Vulture and the Thunderbird. FX2 on backhand, I mean, this is a 4 glide versus a 5, and typically, I mean, glides here or there, I think it's like very subjective, but FX2 definitely didn't want to stay in the air as long for me, and definitely had more ground play. It was definitely more overstable for me. I mean, I definitely see where you could flex this because it does have that -1 turn, so you can get it to flex a little bit. And I did see that if I let it go on Anheuser a little too much, but it's coming way back to the left from me. It's definitely has an overstable finish with some ground play. So I think that's where they kind of differ.
Okay. Did you try them on Anheisers at all?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, again, because I think you can definitely flex these, use them as like a flex shot to get around something. FX2, I think, is probably a little superior in that because it does allow that little bit of turn. Whereas the Thunderbird, I feel like I had to hit it a little harder on Anheuser personally to get it to flex.
Okay. That's so fascinating. Okay. Yeah. Very, very curious. Just in terms of.
Yeah, but I will say this: the Thunderbird definitely holds the line farther or longer. You know what I mean? It's like a more gentle.
Yeah.
Versus the FX2 is more of like that, like hard S turn.
Yeah. Once it comes out of it, it is.
It really comes out of it. Yeah.
Sayonara. Okay. Now, Franklin, before I ask Brad this question, do you throw any when you're going for your max distance forehand? What disc are you throwing for forehands?
So one disc that I did have in the bag was an Eagle a long time ago. I raved by that, kind of cycled it a little bit. That was my go-to forehand disc. I just felt like the glide on the Eagle was starting to fail me when I was trying to push it a little bit further, especially when I'm getting closer to that like 350, 370 range. So I decided to actually try out a Thunderbird. And the only reason that I've taken the Thunderbird out of the bag was because of the fact that when I was testing it against the D Model S and a few other distance drivers, it was coming out really inconsistently out of my hand. Early releases, late releases, just something about the wing and the shallowness of the Thunderbird didn't actually suit my grip very well. So I decided to put in a MVP Terra because I know we didn't touch on that. So I have that in the bag currently to kind of fill a more Firebird-esque slot. I don't have something that's kind of pushing straighter in the bag currently. So overall is like, right now I'm kind of working with a Tesla kind of from MVP. Since one of my brothers had some extras of those to kind of fill that more niche spot between a Valkyrie and the Terra on forehands potentially. But overall, I was like, I didn't ever try a Star Thunderbird. I had a G Star one and a Luster one. So I was like, maybe that could fill a different niche. But overall, I just know when I was testing the Luster, Thunderbird out in the field, it was kind of misreleasing at times. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think definitely the Thunderbird has that straight push before the overstable finish. The FX2 does. It just, I don't, personally for me, I couldn't get the distance, like the glide wasn't there for me. So maybe it's just a different, I was just feeling as you're talking about that. I see what you're saying about the Thunderbird. I wouldn't call it shallow by any means. See, to me, the Terra, like I have a Terra kind of like in my bag to test out for like that spot, but the Terra is very shallow for my hands anyway. But yeah, the FX2 is definitely a little deeper than the Thunderbird. I was just trying to take that into consideration. I didn't think about that when I was throwing it, but now that you mention it, the FX2 is definitely a little deeper than the Thunderbird.
Yeah. So, Brad, my question to you would be, hearing kind of all of that, is there a disc that you feel like jumps out, or is it even like, hey, maybe it's not this Thunderbird, it's a Halo Thunderbird or whatever, because you've now you have the inside scoop on that mold, seeing it now in a couple different plastics as well.
Well, I just seeing the chart in general without even hearing any background, like my recommendation was the FX2. now that you said it about the grip and thinking about the turn a little bit too, what kind of release do you have on your forehands? Is it more of a flat release, hyzer release, anhyzer release?
It definitely tends to be a little bit more on the hyzer to flat release. So.
Okay. See, because I'm also thinking as like a pushing, like kind of a forehand disc as well. I think the FX2 could probably fit a forehand disc for you and
Yeah.
a backhand disc for you. So that with that little bit of turn, and that's what I always liked about like the Thrasher, for instance, on forehand, is it gave me because I have a hyzer release on my forehand as well. It gave that little bit of turn, so I could almost flip it up or encourage it to go very straight for longer.
Mm.
So that's kind of where I'm leaning. I'm a little bummed that you didn't like the feel of the Thunderbird because I think the shot you're describing is probably more easily achieved by the Thunderbird, but um, if you don't like the feel of it, you don't like the feel of it. That's where I am with a lot of discs. So that's
Yeah.
just kind of how it is. So I think the FX2 is probably, if you're willing to try it out on both forehand and backhand, I think it fits several different slots for you. And I've said this before, like I'm a bigger fan of recommending a disc that has multiple shots for you versus one shot. So that's kind of where I am with it. Me personally, Prodigy is nothing against you. I just don't love the feel of Prodigy plastic. Um, I think they make really good molds. Like I think the FX3 is really good. I think the H7 is a really good mold. There's I think the Distortion's a great disc too. You have one of those, but they're not for me. So you're already used to the plastic, and what you might find since you've kind of adopted the mold minimalization. I mean, you're gonna get this FX2, and if you love it, then you can. This is 500 plastic. You can try it in 400 plastic and really see what kind of additional shots it gives you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Franklin, is this a disc that if we send it to you, you'd be willing to try out and come back on in a future episode to kind of let us know, like, big whiff or, hey, this actually does kind of work for me?
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely like to try the FX2.
Okay, that's great. We'll send it out to you. I'll be very curious of your feedback. And again, I think it's going to give you, again, pulling that D Model S down, if you will. So you're not sacrificing distance, but it's going to give you maybe the same type of flight, maybe that little bit of like ground play you're looking for, and overstability in the wind. So,
for sure. Awesome. Well, Franklin, dude, thank you for coming on. Always appreciate having new guests, and we really, I think one of my favorite parts about this entire interview has been just there's a lot of thought you can tell that's gone into why you have the discs in your bag. So it's like it's a tough. I'm going to be honest. I'm very curious for the feedback when you try this disc, because when someone's put this much thought into their bag, to have strangers come in and try to like adjust it always is a tricky job on the strangers. And so I think there's a very real chance we whiff, but I also think there's a very real chance that we hit a spot exactly. So very excited to have you on for a reunion episode, man.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Yeah, this was great.
Man, I'm telling you, Brad, it is like it's so when you bring guests on, you really have all I have are basically, for those of you who have not submitted like an application, I have a look at your bag. I have basically some of the same questions that we ask in terms of interviewing you. And then we leave room for like, is there anything else you want to tell us? So it's always when you see a bag, you have some people that are like, this look cool. I decided to put it in. And then you have others that are like Franklin, in terms of I have dove into the K1 soft. I've dove into, and I just didn't like how I hand feel of it. And like, it's always so fascinating trying to do what we're doing here. So I just want to apologize for future guests if like we do whiff completely, or like, yeah, if you've thought through your bag, I appreciate it a lot. It makes for, I think, a really interesting conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Like, as we just kind of learn along the way.
Well, I think it's a big compliment for people who have been listening for a long time and they're like applying some of the things we're talking about. I think it's a big compliment for sure. We appreciate you all taking that feedback. But I think sometimes it's just as important to know what you don't like versus what you do like. So even if it's hey, this didn't work for me, but it made me try this, I think that's still a win. And that's probably I don't know. I think it's really 50-50 with this disc. I mean, I think the FX2 could possibly be everything he wants, but it also could be nothing he wants. It's going to be a win or a fail. There's not a middle.
That's fair. That's fair.
Mhm.
Well, if it isn't what he wants, there's a place he can find other alternatives at foundationdisc.com. So, Brad, what's new in the warehouse?
Let's see. So we did all of our pre-selling of the new Simon Hex. So thanks for everyone who pre-sold that or pre-purchased that. Keep an eye out. So this is on the 19th. We're shooting this on the 20th. The pre-sales go up for all the Paul Macbeth 6-claw discs as well. So keep an eye. Those are going to go live at midnight. So by the time you hear this, they may all be sold out. I apologize, but if not, just go on and take a look at it. You'll be able to pre-sell pre-purchase all of those discs as well. Excited to get those in, get our hands on those. Let's see. We have Mason Ford Diamondbacks that have just went up on the site. We restocked our Gateway. We restocked our MVP, although that went very quickly after the sale we had last weekend. But still a lot of good stuff on there. Octanes, Envies, Craves, you name it. We have about everything except for hexes and proxies. So check those out. The two biggest things are foundation care. If you haven't heard about foundation care, make sure you check that out. Basically, you're getting a risk-free trial on a new disc, new plastic, new manufacturer for 30 days. You throw it on the field, and the course, you don't love it. You send it back. We pay for the shipping, and you get to exchange for a disc of the same value on the store. So very easy. You just add the foundation care on checkout on our website. So make sure you check that out. Also, if you haven't heard about our subscription boxes, make sure you check those out as well. This month is the Brody box, so a special gift from Brody in there, as well as some disc he recommends and why he throws them. So make sure you check those out, especially if you're a Discraft fan or someone who wants to try some discs that Brody enjoys. So make sure you can find that all on foundationdisc.com.
Yeah, and who knows? You're going to try this disc that Brody throws. You're going to be throwing 700,000 feet like Brody throws. You're going to be like, man, this disc is so good.
You got to keep it in the bag. Well, until next time, we'll see you.